Well, last night was very interesting. Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. In today's episode, we're going to talk about three different topics. Number one, well, it's over. Elon Musk is done selling. So we're going to touch on that briefly. And then we're going to talk about the interview I just got done watching this morning on CNBC with Gordon Johnson and Gene Munster, and just it's so funny how some of these idiotic points that Gordon makes over and over. He's like a 2-year-old. He even goes at one point calling Waymo Wamo. I mean, it just shows you like the incompetence this guy has in this space, in this field. We're also going to take a look at a new interview that just dropped last night with Elon Musk and Lex Fridman. If you guys don't know who Lex Fridman is, you are missing out. He's a scientist, a physicist, I believe was his major out of MIT. He used to work with Boston Dynamics, did some side stuff with them, but just absolutely excellent mind, excellent interviewer, just somebody who goes deep. And finally, I've been waiting for this. Like, the Babylon Bee interview was interesting, but I like these interviews where people get more in depth with Elon, and very few interviewers do. Even like the ones that we saw, recently with him. What was it? The Bloomberg or the Times or whatever it was. Those interviews are just so shallow, so surface level, and to have a engineer, a scientific mind interview Elon is just, at least for me and my engineering self, it just, hits another level, and it gets into more in-depth detail. So we're going to talk about that interview and some key points that came out of it with regards to Tesla specifically. And then we're going to end it talking about Tesla's current share price. And some things I just noticed yesterday that happened, and why I think we are on the precipice of a new bull run, a new all-time high, and what's going to happen moving forward. So a lot to cover. I'm going to try to make this as concise as possible, but this might be a 30-minute video, so we'll see what happens. But do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. Don't forget, we do have a merch store. You can find the link down below. And with that said, we got a lot to cover. Let's get into it. Last night, we got 2 new Form 4 filings on Tesla's investor relations page. And this is the conclusion of Elon's 10% selling to cover his taxes for his exercise options. Now, how do we know this is the end of it? Well, take a look at this. Here you can see it specifically calls out that this 10.5B selling has completed, right? It's come to its conclusion. And so we know that for a fact, right? It's done. It's over. Not to mention all the other signals we've had where Elon said there's only about 3 tranches left. We hit it. The fact that we hit the 22 million amount of options exercised, we hit that. And also Elon multiple times said about 10%. And guess what? We got to about 10%. So if all that wasn't enough, here on the SEC filings, we see specifically called out that this is over, that it's done. But of course, mainstream media is so quick to get out there and put out news and get clicks and whatever. Take a look at this. This is on CNBC. Elon Musk sells another 1 billion in Tesla shares, nearing 10% target. Now, if you go into this, it doesn't actually talk about him finished selling. It just says he's nearing the 10% target. It's hilarious. Now they're keeping it open-ended, right? Whereas before, a couple days ago when, I was talking about how, well, I don't think Elon's actually done selling. He mentioned it in the Babylon Bee interview, but the media ran with it, said, oh, Elon Musk is done selling. Elon Musk is done selling. Well, like I said the other day, no, he wasn't. It was very obvious he wasn't done selling, but mainstream media didn't want to wait and do their due diligence or homework. No, they just went ahead and put out an article that would get clicks right away. Oh, I'm going to spill my coffee here. But then we see this again. And of course, they don't do the due diligence and don't go and verify that he's actually done selling, right? Because if they did do that, if they actually looked at these filings, they would have saw that it said that he's completed. And instead of saying that he's nearing 10%, that Elon Musk sells another 1 billion Tesla shares, the headline would be Elon Musk is done selling, right? Anyways, it's just comical to me. But on a bigger picture, we're done with this. Okay, we can put this behind us. Now, I do think Elon will continue to sell in the future, especially as he gets more options that are going to get to expiration. He's not going to allow this options to expire. He's going to have to exercise them, or he will exercise them. Then he'll need, cash to pay for the taxes on that. And so the only way to get, cash would be to sell stock. So we'll see what happens there. I think this will continue. Just a real quick point. For those of you who act like Elon isn't actually gaining more shares right now than what he had before because he had these options, this is fundamentally just a misunderstanding of how this works. Options are not actual shares for Elon. Okay, options are a right, not an obligation. Okay, so he could have let them expire worthless and pay no taxes. Now, by him going through the process of actually exercising it, right, that creates a forced taxation on those shares, because now he actually is taking those. And so to sit there and act like, he doesn't have more shares now than what he did when he started, that's just a misunderstanding of the way options work in general. All right, so bigger picture, we're done with this. This was a nothing burger to begin with, in my opinion. It created a great opportunity for a lot of us to pick up Tesla stocks or sell puts or do anything at a way lower cost. So I think this created a huge catalyst for a lot of us Tesla investors, a lot of us Tesla bulls. I think this was a gift from Elon. For some of us, it was an over six-figure gift. So thank you, Elon. Appreciate it. We'll talk more about that in a future video, by the way. But with that said, let's jump on to this interview with Gene Munster and Gordon Johnson. And, I can't even understand how CNBC keeps bringing this guy on over and over. He does not understand this industry. Let's take a look.
You guys want to grab breakfast after the hit? I don't know if you're near each other or whatever, but that's on me, because you guys are not really on the same page on this. I don't think. And we need to talk it out.
Before we continue on this interview, can we just look at Gordon Johnson's background? I don't know why. And, I don't mean to insult anyone's house or anything of that nature, but he, I swear, tries to find the most obnoxious and hideous backgrounds intentionally. Look at this house. What is that wallpaper he has? And then he has a picture frame within a picture frame. I don't know. It's not good. It just isn't good.
Gordon, what does Gene not see that you see? And Gene, what is he smoking to get to his position on this? Gene, why don't you start? You think Tesla is a market leader? It's going to continue to lead?
I think so, and I think it comes down to consumer preference. There is an affordability question around the price of their EVs. The preference side is EVs obviously are gaining separately. In the pricing side, you have a $50,000 vehicle versus their competitors at largely above $50,000. And the third piece that I would kind of agree with the setup that 2022 is the year of deliveries. The third piece is that they are in a spot where I think that they can deliver over 1.3 million vehicles, up from about 900,000 in 2021. And just to put some perspective around that 1.3 million, I think that Rivian is going to deliver best case around 70,000. I think Lucid, best case, 17,000. I mean, we're talking about Tesla between those three delivering 94% of the vehicles. I just want to finish with one thought before I turn it over to Gordon, is that that is by definition, there is a definitional losing of market share there when you are giving up 6% of that. However, I think when you look at the arc of where EVs are going, I still think Tesla's going to be in a great spot in 2022.
So before we let Gordon Johnson go ahead and spew his BS out there, Gene Munster is a very calm, mild-mannered demeanor individual. Okay, you can tell he's more of an introvert than anything, right? He's not someone who's going to rock the boat or someone who's going to be aggressive towards anyone. And if somebody thinks a certain thing, especially in this setup, right? If Gordon thinks one thing, Gene's really not going to try to rebut it too much. He's like, okay, if that's what you think, that's what you think. We'll see how it plays out. While the setup for this is really supposed to be more of a juxtaposition, right? Where people kind of debate and argue their point. And Gordon, he plays that narrative and he does it well and he does it for the TV and the clicks and all that. And that's why they keep bringing him on. But Gene, he's not about that. Okay, he's kind of mild-mannered. But what he did do at the end of there is try to anticipate what Gordon's, his argument's going to be. And it's the same argument every time. And it's that Tesla's losing market share. And what Gene tried to say there, and he didn't really say it as well as he could have, is that yes, Tesla's going to lose market share because other people are coming in, right? But what you're not understanding is that the pie keeps growing. So in other words, if the initial pie is $10 and I told you that you get 90% of that $10, okay, great, you get $9. But what if I told you that the pie grows to 1,000 and you only have 20%? What's bigger? Is that 20% bigger than that 90%? I think so, right? And that's Gene's point, and that's what Gordon never wants to talk about and always ignores. So let's hear what Gordon has to say.
Okay, Gordon.
All right, listen, I think that Tesla's valuation is, for lack of a better word, absurd. And listen, so for Tesla at $1,000 to be represented in the valuation, it needs to go from selling roughly 900,000 cars a year to 20 million cars a year. That's what Gene is projecting in 10 years. What that means is that every single quarter, Tesla needs to ramp and build and basically come out with a new factory of 500,000 cars that's completely sold out. Clearly, they're not doing this.
Before I continue, can I just say, this is honestly comical. Gordon just took this entire argument from someone on Twitter. All right, this was a Tesla Q person. I saw him tweeting this morning. I saw it at maybe 6 a.m. is when I woke up this morning. I think that's when I saw it. And verbatim, somebody tweeted this. And all Gordon did was take that and is using that as his own talking point. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. I wish I could have screenshotted before I started recording this. I thought about it and I just, it slipped my mind. But look for it. It's actually comical. Gordon's getting his investment ideas, his talking points from Twitter specifically, not from his own thinking, not from his own spreadsheets, not from his own models, from Twitter. That's where he's getting it. Nothing against Twitter. Twitter has a lot of good resources, a lot of good stuff to bring to your attention. But at the end of the day, you need to distill it and make sure it makes sense to you. Don't use that as your talking point, because at that point, you're no different than watching Fox News or CNN or MSNBC and just regurgitating the rhetoric they're spitting out. Think for yourself. Don't be a sheep.
So if you assume they do this every 6 months, it's going to take 20 years. By the way, they're not planning a new factory every 6 months. But even assuming they do that, that's going to take 20 years. But you got to discount that back. You know this. You guys know you got to discount it back, net present value. So people in Tesla stock expect to earn 15% a year. You assume they ramp a new factory every 2 quarters, 500,000 car per year factory that's completely sold out, by the way, which they're not doing. And you discount that back by 15%, you're talking about a $30 stock. Keep in mind, in China, their market share has fallen from 23% to 11%. They're not leading. They're being outsold by BYD and GM. In the EU, they're being outsold by VW by 2 times. They're not the leader there. And their market share has fallen from 33% to 15%. Keep in mind, in China, VW is expected to sell 2/3, roughly 75% the amount of cars Tesla will sell this quarter, and they're going to surpass them next year. So when you see competition, Tesla significantly loses.
So we're going to leave it there. There's more to the interview, which I recommend you check it out, but I want to leave it there. Let's just talk about what Gordon just said here. First of all, this is the problem with all these sell-side analysts and all these people who are part of the automotive analysis or analyst division or groups within certain firms. They look at it as a one-for-one. Well, Toyota has this market value, and they sell this amount of vehicles. Tesla has this market value, and they only sell this amount of vehicles. And that's all they think about. Like, that's the simplicity of their logic here. Yet, what they fail to realize is, we're not even talking about, that Tesla's not really a vehicle company. They're a tech company. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about strictly vehicles to valuation. What they seem to misunderstand is that Tesla has a 3 times margin on automotive vehicles than anyone else does. So in other words, you can see the million vehicles they're going to make in 2021. Really, if you're going to compare it to other manufacturers, it should really look more like 3 million, right? Just to be on par with the revenue numbers. On top of that, you also have to take into account, you have to remember, a current valuation is not, a valuation or a stock price should not reflect today's value. A stock price reflects the future. all right, what we think it's going to get to, what's going to happen. And what do we know? We know that Tesla is about to open up 2 new factories. So there's just so much into it. And then, there's just the same thing I've been saying over and over. And Elon just said it recently in a tweet that Tesla is as much of an automotive company as Apple is a phone company. Okay, Apple is not a phone company. Apple is a software company. Tesla is a software company, and software is what's prevailing. Software is the differentiator here, and this is what no one's understanding. Now, and then there's everything else, right? There's the energy side, there's the insurance, there's full self-drive. I mean, there's just so many other things, and Gordon's just has such a big misconception about this. Now, again, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Gordon and give him too much attention. Listen, at the end of the day, if you disagree with every single thing I'm saying, take a look at this. This is Tip Ranks. And here we can see Gordon Johnson. If we come down here, his success rate is 53%. All right, 53%. So in other words, I can flip a coin and do just as well as this amazing analyst who went to school for this and did all this and started his own firm. I can flip a coin and be as accurate as him. That's all it takes. Doesn't take any brain power. It takes a quarter. That's it. Now, let's look at his average return. Negative 8.1%. Yeah, I don't think I want to go with that. And then let's take a look at his history with Tesla. So if I go back as far as this goes, so call it July of 2018, he's been saying sell since the stock was effectively at about $56. The stock has gone from $56 to $1,200. All I'm saying, nothing wrong with Gordon Johnson. Not saying he's a bad guy. I think he does all this just to get noise and attention and get on TV to make money? Yes, I do. But maybe he is an okay analyst. Maybe. Who knows? What I can say for a fact is that he's not an analyst you want to listen to when it comes to Tesla. Why do I say that? Well, if you listen to him, then you have missed out on all of this run. This entire run, you have missed out. In other words, if you would have not listened to him and you would have bought, say, in July 2018, you probably would not be working anymore. Okay? That's all I'm saying. He may be right about other companies and other stocks, right? Flip of a coin, he's right 50% of the time. But what he's not ever right on is Tesla, and that's proven over and over. In other words, don't bet against Elon. Don't bet against any Musk company. You're just doomed to fail. All right, so with that said, that's a great lead in to this interview with Lex Fridman and Elon Musk. So let's talk about that because I have a few points I really want to highlight. For those of you who are new to the channel or have never been here or have never made it this far into a video, I'm a software systems engineer. Before this, my prior life, I was a mechanical electrical engineer. I worked on ships, and when you work on a ship, you're essentially there's not many engineers on there, right? So an engineer on a ship has to be able to handle essentially any problem. So whether it's a mechanical issue, whether it's an electrical issue, whether it's an electronics issue, whether it's hydraulics, thermodynamics, fluids, right? It doesn't matter what it is. As an engineer on there, you have to be able to do everything from welding to lathes to everything. Now, I did that for a long time, so I have a fairly solid grasp in mechanical electrical engineering. I want to lean into more of the software world, so I eventually, just dove straight into that, and that's what I've been doing now for the last, I guess, call it 4 years. So with that said, I feel like I'm a pretty well-rounded engineer. There's so much more I don't know, but I have a pretty good understanding of basic concepts when it comes to electronics, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and software now. And so an interview like this with Lex Fridman is something that I've been waiting for a while. We don't get a lot of these. We get a lot of interviews with people like Joe Rogan, which, I think Joe Rogan's a great interviewer, but they don't go too in-depth when it comes to the engineering or the technology or the software or mechanical nature of things. We saw the what was it, Bumblebee? I forget what it's called. But we saw them, Babylon Bee. We saw them interview Elon, and again, that was just another surface level. We've seen some of the Times and Bloomberg's, again, surface level. Just, what are you doing with this? Well, what's going to happen? When are you going to do this? Are you worried about the competition? Right? Just all this BS. I don't care about any of that. I want to get deeper. And so that's what happened in this interview. Lex Fridman, I think he's actually a physicist, but he went to school at MIT. He worked at MIT for a while. He's very, very passionate with humanoids. He did a lot of stuff with Boston Dynamics until they got a little too marketing and trying to get too much commercial or MBA into it. He's been obsessed with the idea of full self-driving and essentially visual software, visual understanding, where a computer can understand the world from a perspective understanding. So this interview was one that I was extremely excited last night. When it came out, Elon tweeted it, and that's when I first saw about it. Then I saw Lex Fridman, and immediately it went up on my TV. And for 3 hours, I was encapsulated in this interview. But this is a channel about investing. This is, just yet another, passion of mine is investing other than engineering. And so I want to keep it, focused on that. So let's talk about the Tesla segments within this 3 hour long interview. For the investors out there, I think the most notable comment that Elon made with regards to Tesla was when Lex Fridman asked him the following. You can see this little meme here. When do you think Tesla would solve level 4 full self-driving? And Elon responded saying, it's looking quite likely that it will be next year. Now, keep in mind, level 4 and level 5, there's really not much difference between them. At level 5, it's more so of a regulatory issue at that point, getting regulators to accept it. And it's also has more so of the who's the onus if there's an accident. Is the onus on the company who has the full self-driving software, or is the onus on the individual driver, right? So then it becomes that question. But level 4 is essentially autonomous vehicles at that point. It's just a matter of whose responsibility is at the end of the day. And so, hearing Elon talk about, in 2022, he goes on to talk about how, with a lot of FSD beta testers out there, we hear them say, oh, it's lagging here, oh, step backwards here, oh, it used to do this better. But they don't see the bigger picture, right? They don't see what's happening with all the data sets that are coming in, right? All of the different matrices math are being done to have certain biases and to test different loops out, and the iterations going on behind the scenes. But Elon obviously can see that. And he sees it from a global perspective, which is the right way to look at it if you're going to judge something, right? Not just in your little cone or circle of competency, which with a lot of the beta testers, it's what they're doing every single day. And so with that said, Elon was talking about how the amount of disengagements or interventions, right, it's dropping off so fast with each iteration, right? Each iteration they put out is dropping faster and faster and faster. And so this gives Elon the confidence that's to say that by the end of 2022 that he thinks we'll have level 4. Now, keep in mind, just because he said that, right, he's being put on the spot. He's being asked, hey, when do you think this will happen? And Elon's given a guess, right? He doesn't have to say anything. He could be a political pundit and say, oh, well, timelines on anything, whatever, and not give a real answer. But he doesn't do that, right? He puts it out there. He says what he thinks, and if he's wrong, he's wrong. It doesn't matter, but at least he's answering truthfully. Now, a lot of people will criticize saying, oh, well, Elon's been saying that we'll have this next year since 2018, since 2019. Well, on the podcast, as he's done before, he talked about, he said, he knew that it would be hard to do autonomous vehicles, but he thought that, they'd be able to solve it, fairly quickly. But he thought it would be hard. It turns out it was a lot harder than what he even thought it would be. And, he talks about that a little bit in the interview. But what's interesting is that knowing that it's harder than what he even thought, he still believes that's going to happen in 2022. Now, keep in mind, and again, they talk about this interview, which I love. Tesla did the unthinkable. Okay, Tesla, they started off with Mobileye for their full self-driving. And they eventually decided, okay, we're hitting these local maximas and we're not really getting any better. Whether it's the labeling, whether it's the fact that we have to put all of the C or C++ around the Mobileye software on its own in order for it to work the way we want it to, it's not working. And so Tesla went off to do a fundamental complete rewrite and bring everything in-house. They said, all right, we're not going to use Mobileye anymore. We're going to do all the software in-house. Not only did they decide to do it all in-house, they decided to make all of the hardware in-house. So they ditched NVIDIA and decided to make all of their own full self-driving computers in-house, making their own chips in-house. So, well, I guess I should say designing, because they don't have a fab, right? So they're not actually fabbing the chips, but they're designing the chips and making it what they want and what they need, right? And the truth is, a NVIDIA chip versus something they make for themselves has different needs, right? It's something that is, just to get kind of a little higher level basic, some application that might require more cores is going to look a lot different than an application that requires higher clock speed. So, making sure that your processor that you're creating reflects the needs of the application is what matters. And that's what Tesla did, right? They designed essentially the processing, the brain of the computer in-house to reflect what they needed, what made sense for them. So they don't have to waste any cycles, any energy, any inefficiencies. Every single bit of heat that's created, it's there for a reason. And, you don't have enough time, or you can't afford to have any inefficiencies when it comes to thermos and anything when it comes to what they're doing. Because keep in mind, they're taking this massive, massive amount of software and they have to compile it and compress it down to put it into the vehicles. It's insane. So absolutely nuts what they're doing. And I don't think disrespected enough. Now, one of the most important things that I heard Elon say at this point, and keep in mind, no matter how much I watch FSD stuff, no matter how much I'm in the software world, right, which isn't, autonomous driving related, I will never know what Elon knows, because he sees the whole picture. He sees the whole landscape, right? He's talking to these people every day. He's gained all the data from millions of vehicles, and he sees what's happening. And what he said on the interview is that he's convinced that there is no other way to solve this problem than by vision, right? Essentially the same way we do it, right? We have a biological neural net, our brain, and we have our own cameras, our eyes on a gimbal, our neck. And essentially what he's saying is there's no other way to do it other than through sight, because that's the way all the road signs, the whole world is designed to drive using our sight and our neural net. And so in his opinion, this is the only way forward. You can get close and you're going to hit local maximums, but you're never actually going to get there. And so what Tesla does, which most of you are probably aware, is they have all of these eyes or cameras all around the vehicle, right? More than what we have, right? They have, I think it's a total of 8. So they could see what's going on behind them at all times, on the side. They don't have any of this lack of peripheral vision, right? Like our peripheral vision is, it's decent, but it's horrible, right? We're filling in the picture of what we think is actually happening. But our actual focus is what's ahead of us, or whatever we're focused on. That's what we really see. Everything else, our brain is trying to ignore and trying to dump out because it's not as important. Cameras don't have that issue, right? They see everything 24/7 all around us. On top of that, we have our neural net, our biological neural net. Well, what Tesla's doing, their software is creating a silicon-based neural net, and that is the software that runs the vehicle. And that neural net doesn't get distracted, okay? It doesn't get a text and here's that sound or that vibration looks this way, right? It doesn't get in arguments with their spouse. It doesn't need to turn the radio up. It doesn't get lost for directions, right? Not only that, but it won't miss things, right? Because if I see, if I look this way to make sure no traffic's coming and I start to go and creep out, well, maybe somebody starts walking this way. But I'm looking over here to make sure, because it's hard for me to see, to make sure that it's clear for me to go, even if it's a one-way. Meanwhile, this lady with her baby in a stroller are walking by, right? This is what we're talking about. This is the difference. It's the vehicles will get to a point where it's just better than humans. And this goes back to what Elon was saying as far as getting to, level 4 or level 5, is that the vehicle has to be 2 to 3 times better than what a human is. It has to be obvious. It has to be so transparent and essentially to the point where you're ridiculous and it's dangerous to allow humans to drive. So that was a lot specifically about full self-driving, but I think it's important. I think it matters, especially because, my last few videos, I've been harping about this, that I think this is the biggest missed opportunity that people aren't seeing. Everyone's caught up on Elon Musk selling shares. Everyone's caught up on Giga Berlin delays or opening or Austin, right? Guys, full self-driving, this is the big one, okay? This is the next iteration. This full self-driving will, in my opinion, be bigger than the vehicles themselves. I think full self-driving will be bigger than the energy side of business, bigger than insurance side of business. Full self-driving will be the biggest, most game-changing, revolutionary software event product that we have seen since, in my opinion, the iPhone. Like, that's how big I think this will be. Now, and we're comparing that to the iPhone, right? It should really be considered Full self-driving would be more revolutionary since the vehicle was created, right? Since Henry Ford created the assembly line and we could have mass production. I mean, that's what should really be considered on. So this was also interesting. They're creating their own compiler. So in other words, they're trying to compress everything as much as possible to get it onto the vehicles and to actually be able to do more things with it. So I thought that was very interesting. And so I've written here as well. So what they're working on is getting rid of lines of code. And this is what version 11 is going to be. So not to be confused with software release 11, but FSD beta 11. What's happening is they're going to move from essentially a whole bunch of different stacks, and they're going to move to a full stack. So right now where you'll have highway and FSD, right, and they're separate stacks, they're going to compile all of them into one stack. But then what they're also starting to do is they're starting to remove some of the C++ that they have within their software, and they're trying to transition that more into the neural nets. And so as the neural nets take on more of this C++, the code drops, right? So we get more efficient, right? We're starting to taper down. And we're giving more into the neural nets, which means you have less of this heuristic problem that you get when humans have to code themselves, right? So essentially, it becomes more of a code 2.0 to 3.0. I mean, I know we all talk about Web 3, but really the next movement, in my opinion, is this movement to this new wave coding, where essentially humans coding could be considered error. Right. Again, it goes back to the whole heuristics problem that we constantly hear Andrej Karpathy talk about. So I thought that was pretty exciting. Now, that's not to say that there's going to be no C or C++ or any coding revolved around the software itself. Elon even mentions that because, at the end of the day, you're going to have that. And keep in mind, just because the neural nets are essentially just a bunch of matrixy math equations that are happening or algorithms that are constantly biased, it doesn't mean that it's not software, right? It's still software, but it's just a different type of software. It's less human sitting there with their meat sticks trying to type and figure this out and code this and, oh crap, I made a syntax error. It's less of that and more so letting the computer learn on its own, right? It's the same way our biological neural nets work. But as we transition from C++ to more neural nets, there will be a learning curve there too. So a lot of this will have to be, this is the whole 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think that'll happen, right? We saw the same thing with radar when they got rid of the radar and they went strictly vision based. It seemed like, this was what? I think that was FSD beta 9. And we thought, FSD 9 is going to be such a big step. And really, FSD 9 was like, okay, this feels just like 8.2 did. But there was no radar involved, right? And so that was kind of like the 1 step back, right? It's like, okay, we didn't really see this fundamental change that we thought we would, but that's the driver experience. What they were missing is that we just got rid of radar. We are using sight to replace radar, which is unheard of, right? So that was actually a very big deal. He also went on to talk about how, so the way cameras work is they take in all of these photons and then they go ahead and kind of render a better image, right? They go ahead and do some post-processing so that you have a better image for you to look at the end of the camera, right? So the image comes in, right? We do some post-processing so that I can look at it. But the problem with that is that it takes a certain amount of milliseconds in order to do that post-processing, right? So it's inefficient. And so what Tesla's starting to do now is get rid of that post-processing part of the camera and just strictly rely on the photons themselves. And in order to do that, there will have to be new training and learning sets that have to be created. But I thought that was a very interesting next level of iteration and efficiencies that we see, right? It goes back to the whole first principles philosophy of Tesla. Like, at the end of the day, what do we really need, right? Does the computer need this post-processing? Well, no, that post-processing is really done for humans. The computer doesn't need that. So if we can just get the raw photons that are essentially coming in and take that raw image and use that, can that be more beneficial? And can we save time, reduce latency, right? Create less jitter in the system? Elon goes more in depth about all that. So I recommend you check out this video. It's a must see, especially if you want to geek out on any of this stuff. And then there's this one last part, which, it's something that just baffles me when I hear people talk about this. He talked about radiation. All right. I know so many people, and hopefully none of you are one of these people or take offense to this, but people get freaked out when it comes to radiation, right? People hear radiation and they think Chernobyl, they think Nagasaki, Hiroshima, right? That's immediately what people think about. And, there's just this misconception that radiation is bad for you. Elon had a great example. Like, you step outside, there's a huge nuclear, fusion reactor happening in the sky called the sun. And without that, we wouldn't even be alive, right? Everything essentially emits some form of radiation, right? We have radiation going all around, right? You have it with different radio waves. You have it with different devices, your cell phone, everything. But people hear the word radiation, they get very alarmed and freaked out about it. I think a big thing that people need to understand is there's different types of radiation, right? Are we talking about photon radiation? Are we talking about particle radiation? What frequency is it? In other words, what wave is it traveling on? Because guess what? Radio waves are the most harmless things in the world. Now, when people start freaking out about radiation, they talk about Chernobyl and things of that nature. What they're really talking about is more so of particle type radiation, or in other words, on the gamma wave, right? Now, gamma radiation, all right, that's bad. That will mess with you, right? That will essentially destroy your body, and that's what we saw with Chernobyl. But people just really overreact to a lot of stuff. I know people are paranoid about their cell phones and the router in their house, and it's like everyone needs to relax. This radiation isn't what you think it is. Do some homework, do some research, understand what photons are, understand what radiation is, understand different waves and how they affect the body, and the different frequencies. Like all this stuff matters. And the only reason, honestly, I know about any of this is, again, because as an engineer, when you deal with things like generators, for example, right? And you have to put it on the same bus, and you have to make sure they're on the same frequency, or you have to actually delay the frequency to get on the same bus so that they sync up together. I mean, you just start to learn about all these things, about the frequencies, and you start to learn about photons and particles, and it's just something you learn over time. So it's not like I'm sitting here telling you this is something that I just knew. I had to learn it. So, if it's something you're scared of, or it's something you've heard other people say and they have their walls covered with tinfoil, feel free to look this stuff up. It is interesting. The whole Chernobyl thing is interesting to begin with, but yeah. So that's it. All I want to talk about as far as the interview with Lex Fridman. Lex asked brilliant questions. I thought it was very good. There's much more. Highly recommend you check it out. Just look up Lex Fridman, Elon Musk interview. I find it hard to believe it hasn't shown up on your YouTube by now. But with that said, let's talk about Tesla stock real quick. So we're here back in Webull as per usual, and looks like the stock market actually just opened. It's about 9:42 East Coast. So we're up about $4. So muted reaction really to Elon Musk done selling. I do think this will look different as the day goes on. But what I really want to show you is not this, right? As you guys know, I can really care less about the daily. But if we go out to 3 months and we go to a daily chart, this is what I was talking to all of you about, is right here, this resistance. And we had this resistance, and it looks like we keep teetering above it. And so I think as long as we pass this resistance, then this downturn, we can consider it done. So in reality, let me change this chart a little bit. If we could close like at 110 or anything higher, I think we'll be very solid. I mean, you can see here, it's going back up and down. First 30 minutes, always crazy in any trading day. But I think, especially as these days go by, right? Tomorrow, this would be 1,095. So I think we're really close to breaking out of this resistance. I know some of you think technical analysis with charts is kind of pointless, but I think it's fun. I think it's cool to see it. I think it's fun to see the trends. And I mean, you do tend to see some truth into this, right? I mean, this bounce happened right where we gapped up. That's interesting, right? We happen to pass these resistances, and the second we pass them, right, we blow up higher. I find all that really interesting. Anyways, if you're interested in this stuff, I think, breaking out of this line is out of this resistance right here, this red line. I think this is going to be a big deal. I think we're really close. Technically, I think you could consider this us already breaking it, but I'd like to see a very definitive break, right? So anything like at, really over 195 of close, I think we can consider this broken. We can consider a new uptrend started. All right, we're gonna leave it there for today. I know this is a longer video, but you know, I get kind of lost in some of these things. I get kind of passionate. These are things that really interest me. Hopefully that comes across. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you took some value out of this video. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. Stick around, check out for tomorrow. I have a video where I'm going to talk about my prediction for, I guess, full year 2021 vehicle deliveries, but also we'll talk about Q4 vehicle deliveries and production numbers, and I'll give my predictions. So that'll be a shorter video, probably only about 5 to 7 minutes, but stick around for it. I'm still crunching numbers right now to get that final tally. I don't want to be too far off. I want to try to get the number perfect. But with that said, I love you all. Thanks for watching. Peace.